Well, Facebook and Twitter fighting accusations of political bias against conservatives. They're now consulting with some prominent conservative groups and individuals, including Grover Norquist. He, of course, is president of Americans for Tax Reform, and he joins us right now. Grover, good to see you. You met with Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. What has the process been like, and are you optimistic about any substantive change in their policies?
Good question. I chair a meeting every Wednesday. We had one today, 150 conservatives, broad center-right coalition, and we meet similar meetings in 41 states and 23 nations. So there's a pretty good network of conservatives, activists, business leaders, trade associations, think tanks, and some have had some trouble with Twitter and Facebook. And one of the things that the leadership on Facebook and Twitter have done is reach out to the center-right meeting and say, what's bothering you? What do you see going wrong? And the answer is there have been some problems. And I guess I've been glad that the questions have been asked. I would prefer not that they come up with some good way to censor or critique, but simply leave those areas open for ideas to compete, however rough and tumble it gets.
Do you think that's realistic? I mean, first, that's nice they're meeting with you, but you look at YouTube, which is discriminating against Prager University. Prager's refiling another lawsuit about that. And do you think that would be an easy one to just tell their people, stop it, whatever your algorithms are going to do? Why not just have a system, as you suggest, if it's not illegal, the provider of Twitter and others can say these are not our views, but here they are.
Yeah, look, my advice to each of these companies, if you don't take a hands-off position and you edit or censor or limit some of them, you own everything that you haven't censored. You've therefore endorsed everything that you didn't censor. Instead of saying, hey, we're a platform, take what you like, view what you like, produce what you like, but if you're going to choose what goes on your platform, you own and have endorsed what's there. And the politicians are not going to keep hands off if they don't take a neutral position. If
Grover,
the companies don't.
Grover, this is Gary Kaltbaum. What are these companies saying they're going to do? I mean, they've already shown they have a clear lack of controls, and when you have tens of thousands of employees with their own feelings and obviously leaning left, one would think human nature, you get the results we've been seeing. What are they saying they're going to change?
Well, I think what we have seen is they're stating that some of that has been individual employees putting their own biases into some of the decisions they make. That needs to be stopped. You did see some of the leadership saying, guys, knock this off. But that needs to get down through all the way through the company. It needs to be taken seriously. Somebody needs to lose their job for having messed around with the algorithms. And there have been some serious cases. I gave a couple cases directly to the Twitter people that really looked pretty awful to me because I was asking around. I'm going to go meet with the head of Twitter. What problems have you seen? And I shared some of those challenges there. There is a challenge. There is a problem. It needs to be fixed. And I think the only safe way for them to do it is to have have what they used to have, an open debate. And otherwise, the government's going to come in and say, no, we don't like the way you're doing it. We'll do it.
Grover, I got to switch a little bit here. I know you have a great op-ed about some of these proposals of little higher taxes. So I decided to bring in the 1975 tax schedule with 24 tax rates, the highest 70%, and that was at 200,000. And it just seems to me out of the left right now, the norm is much higher taxes, and they just simply don't care about the taxpayer. What are you prepared to do? What kind of messages are you trying to send out to make sure this doesn't happen going forward?
Sure. I think the most important thing that could happen is to have the Republicans in the House and Senate, and specifically President Trump, say, on the corporate rate, 21 is not moving. I think that would be good for a rather significant jump in the stock market, because the stock market started to go funny, not just because of China, but also when it became clear the Democrats were likely to take the House, and that 21% corporate rate was at risk. And the companies that most have benefited from the lower rates and would be most damaged by letting the rates drift up are the ones that are being hurt today. I think we need to make it very clear to the markets 21% is not moving.
Grover, that's playing defense, good defense.
Yeah.
Why don't the Republicans come out with their own version, like a flat tax, propose big tax cuts and simplification instead of debating whether it should be 70% or 80%?
Well, I was talking today to Brady, who was the Republican chair of that, of the Ways and Means Committee, is now the Republican, ranking Republican. They're actually spending the time coming up with what do we do next. They don't have the votes to pass it in the House, but there will be an argument being made starting now about the direction we should be going. And you're quite right. We should be talking about 15% as a good next step, not taking 21 up to 28. But we do have to play a little defense. We have to make it clear we're not going backwards. We're not going to go back up. The idea of going to 70%, which was raised by one Democratic congresswoman, no nation in the world is at 70%. Right. The French aren't there. The communist Chinese aren't there.
First of all, we're going to be going further into the hole by about $1 trillion each year pretty soon. So that's a good reason, I think, not to look at lowering taxes. But I wonder, my Republican friends all sound so aggrieved right now, whether we're talking about Facebook and Twitter or we're talking about the dancing Congresswoman AOC and her tax proposal. She's been in Congress about 5 minutes so far. I look at Republicans, I see they control a majority of government with a minority of votes. What's to be so upset about here? There's nothing that's going to get done on a 70% tax rate right now.
Well, I don't think that we will go to a 70% rate. I think it's very interesting that, and Americans for Tax Reform, my group, is now asking all the Democrats in the House and the Senate whether they agree that 70% is where they want to go, because we haven't seen a Democrat yet stand up and go, that's crazy. I would feel much more comfortable if the Democrat Party were willing to do that. The Democrats in '92 had the presidency in both houses. They raised taxes, lost Congress in '94. Then in 2008, they had the presidency in both houses. They raised taxes, they lost the House, and then they lost the Senate. And before they're even in their seats, they're back at the American taxpayer's throat, threatening tax increases. I think they're giving away the House in 2 years. I'm glad for that, but I don't think that the markets and the economy and people's jobs should suffer by the uncertainty of these threats.
Grover, I'm so sorry we run out of time. We've got to have you back. Please come back and see us soon, okay?
I'd love to.